And the first item of business, the city administrator, could you call the roll?
Yes, Warshak.
Here.
Jovs.
Here.
Honkala.
Here.
Loxo.
Here.
Gregor.
Here. All right, we discussed this earlier. We have some logistical problems of both standing up and facing a flag, but fortunately the city administrator has provided a flag. So I'd suggest in this time of national crisis, we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. It's a reminder to us of what we're a part of. So I'd suggest hand on heart. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Well, desperate times require desperate measures to do things there.
That's good.
People who may be viewing this either in a streaming fashion or later on, I think it's appropriate to note that we had issued at an earlier meeting an emergency order. Pursuant to that emergency order, we are authorized to a flag. So I'd suggest in this time of that, I think that was our technician back there.
Yep, it just went on Facebook Live. It's on, it's streaming.
Okay. Anyway, we had issued this emergency declaration, which under the open meeting law of the state of Minnesota enables us or permits us to conduct our proceedings by televideo mechanisms or other electronic means. And we're taking advantage of that, given the nature of the pandemic. And as part of that process, we are utilizing Zoom technology. The Zoom technology does, in compliance with the law, allow us all to see each other, hopefully to hear all of our comments one way or another, and we'll be creating, probably most significantly, creating a streaming record, hopefully on Facebook, on the city's account, I believe, and that can be accessed, and will probably also be replayed at a later time on community television, just like our regular meetings are normally provided. So just so we have that kind of common understanding and background, the next item on the agenda we'd be moving to the consent agenda, which is listed in the agenda for the meeting. The consent agenda is a means by which the asterisks or noted sections of the business that we're supposed to conduct can be acted upon at one time in one motion to approve or disapprove of those items. And at this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Can I just make a real quick, ask a question? If there's questions on these things, can I ask that now before we approve them, or do I ask afterwards?
I think common procedure is what you do is ask for a particular item to be removed from the consent agenda, and then immediately after we presumably approve the consent agenda, you could identify, or we could have a discussion on that item that you're withdrawing from the.
Okay, so it'd just be the approval of receipts. I have a question on the receipts, that's all.
All right. So with the exception then, would I regard that as a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the receipts?
Yes.
Okay, is there support?
I'll support.
Okay, is there further discussion on the consent agenda? If
I
not,
just have, yeah, I'm done. So on the consent agenda, it was just the receipts that I can ask these questions now, right?
well, first we have to vote, I think, on the consent agenda. Correct me, Councilor Warshak is the veteran here, or our city attorney.
Act on the, move on the consent agenda, and then you can address the receipts, because that's going to be been removed.
Okay.
Great. So with that in mind, then let's proceed to a roll call vote. The city administrator will take that on the motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the receipts.
Warshak.
Aye.
Jovs.
Aye.
Honkala,
Yes.
Loxo,
Aye.
Gregor,
Yes. That doesn't leave any room for objection, so the motion carries. Now, Councillor Joffs, do you want to just express what your question or concern is?
As I was going through the receipts today, I just noticed that there was one receipt with one bill with no receipt. Is that a normal thing? What's happened there, Becky? I don't know the rules and regs on this one.
Okay, so there was one bill that did not have a receipt with it, and that was for a return. And typically what happens is we request all the department heads submit all invoices, bills, receipts to us on the Thursday prior to council meetings. We enter them all in for approval. Every once in a while, receipts are missed, especially for a frequent vendor like Bradish or a credit card receipt, that kind of thing. We then just request that receipt from the department heads. And if the department head doesn't submit it by the time the checks need to be printed, we enter that the receipt was not received. We print the check because we have to pay the total bill regardless of if we have a receipt. And then we make note that the receipt wasn't received to follow up with the department head.
Okay, so I think I put a little question mark next to it. So will you check, can you check into that, or can you look into it more?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions on that, on receipts?
I did see that receipt was missing as well, Norma Jean, and
Yeah.
I got asked what items were purchased for that $115, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And I was told by Chief Cromley that he used that card to purchase for that individual expenditure. He used it for gloves and masks, I was told today.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But it would be nice to see the receipt.
Absolutely. Just wanted, okay, perfect. That's what I needed to know. I'm sorry, what?
Oh, all right. Any other comments on the receipts? If not, subject to the explanation that the city administrator guest are provided, is there a motion to approve the receipts?
So moved.
Support?
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, the city administrator, could you take a vote?
Borshak,
Aye.
Jofs,
Aye.
Honkala,
Yes.
Loxo,
Aye.
Gregor.
Yes. Motion carries. Just for, again, viewers, unlike our normal proceedings where we take just sort of a voice vote, the fact we're conducting this by electronic means requires that every vote we take has to be a roll call vote. And that's why the city administrator is calling the roll. All right, so with the consent agenda in hand and passed, city administrator, the next item on the agenda are appearances in public forum. Persons who were requesting to appear before the council had the opportunity to correspond with your office. Did anyone submit any requests or any correspondence?
There have not, no.
All right. And I don't see any other.
How does that work, Becky? Could people like email you ahead of time if they had a discussion item or something, or?
Yep, so we have a couple options that we can go forward, and I was kind of looking for council input before we implemented an official policy. We can request that all public comments be submitted in writing prior to noon on meeting day or whatever that would be. We could have individuals join via phone call, and they would be let in one at a time, ask their question. They would have up to 3 minutes, just like regular meeting. And then the council would take that information. You can also have a live comment period where people can submit it via chat or those types of things.
If we were going to do it by the phone in method, would it be fair to assume that when we post the public notice, or maybe on our website or something, the call-in number would become part of the public notice proceeding or procedure?
Yep.
Okay. And would that also include the link in participating, or just the phone number?
It would just include a phone number. I think that if we did it via, allowed people to join via video, there would be too many problems.
Okay. It's an evolving process, and Councillor Warshak, appropriate to ask and see what we can do. I'm sure our common interest is making things as best able to approximate what our customary meetings were in terms of transparency to the public and opportunities for participation. So I guess it's going to be a learning process on the part of the public as well as council and administration, right? But we are in a state of emergency. So with that explanation, I believe the next item that wasn't part of the wasn't part of the consent agenda is the report from the councilors. And I guess I'll just, I see on the screen, Councillor Hakala. Yeah.
I just want to bring attention to all the efforts of the food shelf, our area food shelf, and our inner church. They've been doing a great job of meeting the needs in the community, and we appreciate knowing that our citizens are getting taken care of. I also see that the garbage is continuing to collect on our street side, curb sides. If you could, when you're out on your walks, I see a lot of people out walking, that's great. Bring just a garbage bag along and pick up just a few items here and there. I know, wear gloves, wash your hands, use hand sanitizer, keep yourself safe. But we need to make our community still look appealing when people come to town or when we're walking around our neighborhoods. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Loxo?
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
All right, Councillor Jobs?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Talisha, so thank you. Another thing I want to do, I want to just shout out a big accolades to our local police department, local fire department, EMS department, and our COVID response team. I know that they have been working tirelessly around the clock. I mean, so I want to make sure that they are thanked. We thank them from the bottom of our hearts. So thank you.
Anything further? No?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Councillor Warshak?
I would just echo what Norma Jean just said. Yeah, everybody's doing a good job, and I have not heard any concerns or whatever the way things are going right now as far as the city and stuff, and that's just a great accolade to our folks, whatever. So yeah, especially Becky and Tim and the COVID-19 team. So, I did get a call from Jan Moore, and it's that time of year where Jan's really getting fired up for the spruce up and getting some flowers planted. So they are still looking for donations, and Becky, no, I forgot to ask you, normally do donations come into our office, or?
No, they usually go to her.
Okay, so donate to Jan Moore and the Spruce Up Committee. Let's see. And they're also looking, I think she said this last time, they're also looking for more help. So if anybody's interested in helping those volunteers out, that would be great. So let's see. Then the only other thing, I just actually noticed it in the paper before I came over here, that the Gilbert playgrounds are closed, and boy, that's just a sad thing, but it's something that all of our communities will have to look at. You know, I mean, so there's no way we can keep them germ free or whatever. So something I'm assuming the team will be looking at. That's all I have, Mayor.
Very good.
And Mayor, you missed staff reports.
Where are they hidden up here?
Number 11.
Number 11. All right. Well, why don't we move? Well, let's see. All right. Point well taken by the city administrator. So how about if we have the staff reports, they may cover some of the items that I was going to mention in my remarks. And then after we've had those staff reports, we could come back and I'll give the remarks that I had. City administrator, do you have any things to share with us?
The COVID response team is going really well. I think that everyone's doing a good job participating from our communities and making the best decisions across the East Range. Our new accounting clerk is also doing a really, really fantastic job in her position. And I think that these electronic meetings are a learning curve, but I think everyone's doing really well at being flexible, and same with our staff, being flexible in the needs we have at this time in our community.
And thanks for your leadership on that committee, by the way. I think in addition to preparing minutes, I understand you kind of act as a chair of the meeting. Is that fair to assume?
Yes, I am the chair.
Well, thanks for that service. And the other thing that others might want to know is that the actions that the city took to establish that COVID response were in advance of what a lot of other communities did, and a good reflection on the proactive nature of the city in trying to deal with the crisis. So anything else, city administrator?
Nope, that's it at this time.
All right. Let's see, Paula, the library report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to let you know what's going on behind those closed doors here at the library. Since the digital scanning equipment arrived when deliveries were still running, and since we were able to contact the patrons who had signed up for our scheduled Scan for Keep service to bring in their materials before the library was closed, our assistant librarian, Sharon Gresley, spent much of that first week providing even more scanning for those patrons than we'd expected. And we're sure looking forward to being able to return those original slides or photos along with the saved digital files to those library patrons. Working from home, Sharon has been working on updating the training manual while looking forward to the day when our new circulation clerk is able to begin work. And she's taken advantage of some of this downtime for some online continuing education. Meanwhile, I've spent much of my time responding to the flurry of emails and phone calls coming in from many sources asking how the library is responding to present circumstances and what services are available. To answer those questions, no circulation is happening at this time. However, you are welcome to either keep checked out library materials. Due dates are being extended until the library opens, or you can return them through the book drop. Several publishers and organizations are opening up their digital content without charge for various times. And I have been setting up access to those sources and posting information to the library's webpage, as well as sharing it on Facebook and communicating directly with individuals who've been asking. I'm also continuing to build orders for new and forthcoming books, movies, and audiobooks, and looking forward to the day when we can place those orders and make all of those new titles available to our patrons. I too have been engaging in continuing education and have been communicating with the library board and preparing for upcoming meetings. The board, Sharon, and I from our various locations will also begin discussion about some needed revisions to our current strategic plan implementation plan and how we can creatively add some strategies to meet the various goals during these times for as long as they last. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, city attorney, is there a report?
Just what's on the agenda, Mayor.
Thank you. Chief Solar, can you report?
So again, I appreciate Norma Jean and everybody's comments on the fire, EMS, and police. I agree with you, Doug. You know, our officers at the East Range Police Department continue to serve our public, you know, day in and day out. Some of the rumor is that we're not placing people under arrest. That's untrue. As you can see, but from the jail roster, we've been very active between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. Unfortunately, it's been a pleasure to work with Northern Pines. They've accepted all our citizens' needs at this point. they've either met or exceeded that, meaning that we've brought in some psych evaluations that were unfortunately placed out of our area due to staffing. But we were able to get them the help like we do at any other time of the year. So that's been refreshing. Not that that cannot change overnight, and we realize that. But it's nice to see the people out and about. And to Councillor Warshak's comment on the parks, you know, as you saw, Gilbert and Virginia, everybody's kind of unique when you talk about a park and how it's used in your community. We haven't closed them in Hoyt Lakes or Aurora. Imagine the task of closing down Pine Grove Park with the walking and hiking trail running through there. Our officers haven't seen large group gatherings of kids or parents where we have to step in and remind them about social distancing. They're by there multiple times, and at this time, from my perspective and the feedback I get from my officers, there would be no reason to close them off completely to our residents. So we're seeing a lot of things. Go ahead.
I wasn't thinking about closing, Tim, but what I was thinking that maybe we could sign, make sure people know that there's no way for us to keep them germ-free or whatever, you know?
Yeah, and hopefully people are taking them precautions, you know, even when they're down there. We're seeing some of that. We might think it's silly to wear a mask, but right now that's the word. They would prefer you wear a mask when you're in public. And I think once we start presenting that and it catches on, and it unfortunately becomes a new norm for a while until this clears. We've done an excellent job as our communities to keep us safe at this point. I'd hate to see us blow it here at the end as we're starting to see things, you know, eventually peak and hopefully come back down for us. So, you know, we've had some parking issues. As you can see, we're addressing those. It's just good common sense. People are asking, oh, you're not writing speeding tickets. Well, you're right. We're not writing them if you're driving the speed limit, but you get over that area where we're uncomfortable, you're going to get a ticket. Those kinds of things. It's not a free-for-all. And it never will be, but we're going to use discretion and good common sense on each individual case. And that's what we see a lot of times. I think it's a lot of black and white. We're operating in a lot of gray area. I can't give you that answer until we know what the situation is, because, you know, it really has to be looked into and addressed. And the decisions we make now are going to affect a lot of our citizens. So we have to be careful when we make them.
So is your force, how to diplomatically put this, properly equipped with the PPE equipment that seems to be such a concern in both the emergency service and medical areas?
Yeah, so we were fortunate to get ahead of the game, as you're aware, with the COVID-19 board, and we're comfortable with where we're at right now. We have also requested a need in the future for more, but as we sit right now, we think for the next 30 days, we're going to be just fine. I mean, we are using some of them. If that need increases, we'll burn through it a little bit more, but we're feeling okay where we're at right now.
Great. Well, we got to keep your force out there protected. That's a vital resource for the community as we go ahead through this, that's for sure.
For sure, and I can't say enough about my guys and gals and the positive attitude that they've brought as other people have. They're missing out on vacations and things that they have planned, but they understand the task at hand and they've been 100% committed. And I couldn't be prouder of the people that are working in our communities. So
great. Well, anything further? Chief, anything further?
No, if not, unless anybody has any questions. I know, Paula, we bring up the library every time, and I know how hard it is for you and Sue to not allow more access, but at this particular time, it is a popular place, and we know if we open that up a little bit, there's a possibility for some exposure there that we really is unwarranted or unnecessary at this time. But I always look forward to Paula's report, and I understand her challenges. So.
Yeah, I think they're very eager to be more directly engaged with their patrons, that's for sure. So, but subject to the obvious restraints of the time. So, any other questions of the chief? Okay, if it's all right, I'll go back to my mayoral comments. And just one thing that I thought for the public listeners, both the small business people and those who have small business individuals in their sort of circle of contacts, the East Range Joint Powers Board is working with its economic development consultant, Northspan, and there was a request both in the shopper and on various web sites and things and through the Chamber of Commerce to try to get business owners to, first of all, fill out a questionnaire on the nature and extent of their needs. And now that those responses came back in, I believe they're available or will be on the East Range Joint Powers Board site. And the next level they're going to now are applications by the small businesses for financial assistance, whether it's grants or through the banks or otherwise. And so to help our struggling businesses, anything any of us can do to put those affected business people in contact with that potential resource would, I'm sure, be much to their advantage and certainly to the advantage of the community. So that's going on out there. And I don't know if Becky necessarily, well, I think the East Range Joint Powers website would probably be the most direct thing there. The other thing I'd ask the other fellow counselors to consider is we've targeted, a blight sort of community meeting or conference for April 16th. I talked it over with the city administrator, and we had also talked about the possibility, just because of the interest of the counselors, that might become another meeting of our, we'd have the required or more than the required quorum. So I talked it over with City Administrator Lammy, and we're thinking that maybe, given the conditions that are existing out there, maybe we could have like a 10 o'clock in the morning on the 16th Zoom meeting. And Councilor Loxo, do you know on this week of the 16th, are you on evenings or days?
Yeah, I don't have my calendar or my phone in front of me right now, Mayor. So.
All right, well, we'll try to accommodate that, but I think the intent was to just have a number of us for resource people and also invite in some of the individuals in the community specifically to participate who have submitted blight complaints, and just kind of brainstorm and try and figure out what would be an effective means of addressing the problem in Aurora, realizing there are a lot of high priorities, and heaven knows what priorities there will be by the time we get around to that. Commendations to the fire department for what seems now a distant memory, but their vintage snowmobile group, as we saw in the council agenda pack, as I think they had 143 participants and raised some good money. That was really great. And one last item on our wastewater treatment plant financing issue. I don't know that City Administrator Lammy's had another avenue to inform you, but the IRRB has indicated that they're intending to recommend to their board in May approximately $100,000 of additional funding beyond the initial grant that they made to help finance part of our system there. So I'm sure Administrator Lammy will be keeping us informed on that, but it probably won't be acted upon until the May meeting of the IRRB. But as we struggled last time with trying to figure out how to finance that project, it's a welcome sign of relief. So other than commending all of you on remaining healthy and being active in the community in the way we can be, that concludes the mayor's comments. And I'll try to get back to the agenda now. Any questions that I could answer on any of those topics? No, I don't see any. All right, next we'd be moving, unless I'm informed otherwise, to item 16 on the agenda of the old business. 16.1 has to do with the odor problem and complaint in the area of South 6th Street East. And let's see, it's been on our agenda a few times. The city administrator, could you kind of explain what brought it up for renewed attention at this time, or is that something we had tabled?
It is not something that had been tabled. The last motion the council made was to have the line videoed, and Public Works Director Thuringer did do that. He reported back that there were no dips or issues with the sewer line. However, the citizen who lives there stated he's still having the issue of the odor on 6th Street. So he would like the council to readdress it.
Well, I did speak with Wayne today, Wayne Thuringer, and had him kind of refresh me on the whole situation there. And he pointed out 3 actions that the city's proactively taken or taken affirmative action on related to that. One was to do what the city administrator described, do an actual video examination of the city lines in the area to see if there was some kind of a blockage that was pushing back any septic or sewage gas, and that proved not to be the case. Wayne said that there had been an effort to extend one of the sewage lines to, more effective way beyond a manhole in the area. That was taken care of, and I believe there was like a third action that he had indicated that we had done, realizing that none of those resulted in a identification of any problems with our city waste disposal system in that area. So his comments, if I can relate those, were essentially that it is a private problem, and his best recommendation that he was giving was that the owner might want to consider putting some kind of a charcoal filter on top of the vent, the roof vent or vents on their house to see if that would address it. So those are the only sort of comments. I gather, city administrator, we're not being asked necessarily to take action. Is that correct?
I believe that the homeowner would like the problem addressed together. There have been several solutions posed at separate meetings. I'm not entirely sure what the council would like to do going forward.
Any councilors that feel there's a different actions or additional actions that we could take?
I guess at this point, honestly, I'm at a loss as to what to do. The city we've done our due diligence to make sure it's nothing that we have. I guess I don't know where to go from here, to be quite truthful. I know that on certain, is it from an odor from the sewer plant? I know on certain days I can smell sewer gas from my house, but it's just on certain days. I mean, I can't name the days, but on occasion it happens. Is it coming from, is it in the air? Is it the direction of the air? I just honestly, I don't know what else we can do at this point.
And Becky, could we open up a line of conversation with the homeowner so that we could go over and inspect the smell?
So we've had several neighborhood meetings regarding the issue. It's difficult to pinpoint where the smell is coming from. I mean, there's certain things a person could point to, timeline wise, that kind of thing. But I know I walk through Pine Grove Park quite a bit, and since it's so low, you smell sewer gas quite a bit in that park. So it's hard to tell exactly when, what, where, all those types of things.
Any other thoughts to share on the matter? Councilor Russia, you're a long time on the council. Any comparable experiences that you can think of?
No, this has been ongoing, like everybody said, for a long time. We've looked at several possible problems and tried to do some fixes, and they haven't worked. Like somebody said, we can't even pinpoint where it's coming from. It was thought that it started after that last new construction at the end of that road or whatever, and then that pump and whatever. But I don't know. I don't think that's ever really been confirmed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So city attorney, can you give us some recommendations at this point? If, I mean, it's being pointed to the last construction now, is it an issue between neighbors? It's not a city issue, correct?
I don't believe it's a city issue. The city's tried to remedy the situation, I think, above and beyond what their legal obligation may be, unless somebody can say it is caused by the city. And you've heard everybody say they can't really pinpoint where it's at. We videoed the line. We extended the line. I think the city even paid a one-time payment to clean out the tanks, which they didn't have to do, but they were trying to get to the problem and address it. And so I don't know what else the city can do. They've tried to do everything. We rely on Wayne, and with the three issues that he's talked about, the city's done. So I don't know what else the city can do at this point.
Comments from any of the other councilors?
Mayor?
Yes.
I can't believe we can't track that down with a multi-gas detector. The fire department has one that will detect hydrogen sulfide, which is sewer gas. And, you know, the closer you get to the source, the higher the reading's going to be. I mean, you know, they use these detectors in different modes for detecting natural gas leaks and other things. And I just can't believe we can't track this down.
I don't recall whether we've asked the fire department to do that, city administrator.
We did speak to Wayne about that. It was brought up, I believe, at another meeting. I'm not entirely sure which one. He stated that typically the amount of gas you find in the air would not be detectable by that type of meter. And that may be wrong, Councillor Locke, so I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, there are different types of meters. The one they have at the fire hall and the one we have at work are just basic meters, but the gas company has a really good exotic meter, but that's for tracking down natural gas leaks. So I don't know if we could look to some other source to get a better meter to try to solve this problem.
That would be council decision.
To work with the city administrator to just try and see if we could uncover some kind of a resource. It doesn't appear that the Public Works Department either knows of or has available anything.
If the city is interested,
modern technological age, one expects that there's always some kind of technology, but
if the city's interested in that, Mayor, I would suggest that you get an estimate if it's going to be an outside source, is what it would cost to do something like that. And I think it's a hit and miss as when the actual odor comes to be, if this outside agency would be able to come in when the odor is being smelled.
Well, that was my comment earlier, that I would be curious at what time does he smell the odor? I mean, if we can determine that, and perhaps look for technology, like Jim said, to see if we can sniff it out. But is he having the problem every day? Is it just specific atmospheric things that cause it to stink more?
And I guess my question is this: when do we say enough's enough? I guess that's my question. I mean, we've done 4 or 5 things already, and it's showing it's not the city problem. I guess when do we say, okay, we can't continue this?
Well, I guess it's not the city. When you say it's not the city's problem, I'd like to try with the fire department's multi-gas detector just to see what it says. And that's a start.
That's what yeah. Why wouldn't we at least try that and then And then, you know, I guess I'm with Norma Jean, not putting more money into it, but maybe there's another city or facility that we could borrow a better meter or whatever too, you know, so.
And I guess the reason why I'm thinking of it is, I mean, so if we continue this, so the next person that calls and says, oh, you know, the air is, I smell sewer gas in my yard and it happens every, you know, maybe once a month. I mean, do we have to do this for everybody else? I just don't want to open up Pandora's box, is what I'm saying.
But until we find the source, we can't say it's not the city's problem because we don't know where it's coming from.
So has the person who is complaining, I can't remember the gentleman's name, has he talked to the neighbor? I mean, has there been some kind of dialogue between the neighbors? I mean, is it just the city that he's been working with? I mean, part of me thinks that now maybe the neighbors should be talking. Just a thought.
I think Becky, wasn't there more than one complaint from a different address?
I believe there's been 2 written complaints, but we had neighborhood meetings last year regarding this issue.
Okay.
Well,
So can we, if they think that it's one particular property, can we, I don't know, can we say, no, that property owner has to take care of this issue? The property owner needs to, just questions, things that are running through my head. I'm sorry.
Wayne indicated that the system that was put in place by this newer residential facility and everything, he said that it was, as far as he could tell, in compliance. It was a little unorthodox, but it does ultimately pump the fluid out of the system into the city sewer system, and that connection and the efficiency of that, he said it's working as it was designed to work, as far as he could tell. So.
But at one time, weren't they thinking that it maybe not pumping down enough? And I think Becky or whoever said, I think we went in and pumped it once.
Right.
And has anybody checked it? And it wasn't going to be our job to pump it again, but is anybody checking just to make sure that the owner is keeping it pumped down or whatever? You know, is that part of the issue, or?
It's hard to determine exactly what the issue is.
Yeah.
Well, Councillor Laxo, you're probably the principal advocate for us doing something. What would you feel the city should do further?
I'd like to start with the fire department's multi-gas detector just to see if we can get a reading and track it down.
And do you want the city administrator to pursue that, or is that something you are personally wanting to work with her on, or not?
Yeah, I'll work with her on that, but I think somebody from Public Works, providing its business hours, to go over there with the gas detector when they receive a complaint or the resident calls in and says they smell, you know.
Well, I don't know that it takes council action, but certainly we could, authorize you to work with the city administrator and the public works director and see if there isn't some available additional technology to look into it, and kind of in line with what the city attorney was raising. Certainly, if it meant incurring any potential additional expenses for the city, I suppose we need to identify that. A question is, Councillor Joffs, how much further can we go, either in assisting or expending money, which we've done? So, Council, do we need a motion to?
I would suggest a motion, Mayor, just that it's coming from council direction.
Okay, is there a motion to have Councillor Laxo work with the city administrator and the public works director to try to see if there isn't some additional technology available? I guess at this point, not necessarily contracting for it, but available to address the issue.
So this will be at no cost to the city.
I believe that would be the gist of what Councilor Laxo is suggesting, is just get information, right?
Other than time to go over to the residents and try to get a sample with the gas detector.
Right.
So it'd just be the city public utilities time to send one person over.
All right. Well, I don't recall. I don't think we had an actual motion. I think I stated what I thought would be an appropriate motion to have Councilor Laxo work with the city administrator and public works director to explore whether there are any additional technologies. Is there support for a motion like that?
You made the motion, Doug. I'll support it at no cost other than time to the city.
Yeah, no cost other than time. Right.
And I do have one question. Is this an essential duty? Do you want us to do this while in the state of emergency, or would you like us to wait?
My recommendation is the attorney, it's not essential duty, it can wait. It's been ongoing for quite a long time, if I recall.
So when the state of emergency is lifted, that this be something else to explore? Would that be part of the motion then? Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, city administrator, could you do a roll call vote on that motion?
Borshak?
Aye.
Jofs?
Aye.
Konkala?
Yes.
Laxo?
Aye.
Gregor?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. That's item 16.1. Just in the interest of time and order, would the council go along with a suggestion to defer item 16.2 until we finish our new business? I'm always trying to be conscious that as devoted as we are, time does fly by. Are there any objections to moving item 16.2 to follow the new business? Hearing no objection, then let's move into new business. 17.1 is the appointment of Mary Lockwood to the Aurora HRA. City administrator, do you want to give a little background maybe on, I personally have observed at HRA meetings that she's quite interested, talented, and willing to serve. Other than that, I don't know anything else to say.
Yep, the HRA received her application and is making a recommendation to the council to appoint her to the HRA board.
Is there a motion to appoint her?
So moved.
Moved. Is there a second or support?
I'll support.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, city administrator.
Borshak?
Aye.
Jofs?
Aye.
Konkala?
Yes.
Laxo?
Aye.
Gregor?
Yes. Motion carries. Let's move on to 17.2. Aurora HRA request to appoint members for a business development committee. We've had a reconstituted HRA. They seem to be eager to pursue business opportunities. And I think what they're trying to do is make sure we as a council lay a foundation or kind of a liaison with the, between the HRA and the council for future business development opportunities. And I certainly, we don't have a business development committee at the moment. Is that correct, city administrator?
Correct.
Right. So with that in mind, I guess I'd suggest that we appoint a business development committee to include Councilor Jofs, who's the liaison to the HRA, the city administrator, and frankly, I'd like to be on it also. And wonder if there'd be approval for establishing a committee like that.
I would be interested in sitting on a committee for business development committee as well. How many seats can we
Well,
fill, Becky?
Quorum.
But you could post a meeting, right, Becky, or?
You could post the meeting as open, yes.
Well, we don't want to restrain your enthusiasm, Councilor Honkala. So, and hopefully there would be sufficient business development business to come before a committee to allow us to apply our talents and sink our enthusiasm into it. So,
Doug, would there
Councilor Honkala added to it, we'd have to give public notice of the committee meetings. City administrator, that's not a major obstacle, is it?
The only issue you would face specifically with a committee like that is you would then be limited to discuss the items posted on the agenda. I know sometimes meetings can get off, but you'd only be able to talk about items on the agenda then.
Okay. Well, I suspect that there'd be appropriate ways to, in business development, you obviously want to sometimes explore opportunities before the developers want them to become public. Usually, I think public bodies get around that by referring to like developer X or something. So even if it's on the agenda, it'd be development project X or something. So there are ways I think it could be done. Have we done anything to blunt your enthusiasm, Councilor Honkala, or would you like to be on the committee?
I would like to sit on that committee. It's an interest of mine, and I want to be a part of that forward thinking for our city regarding business development.
Very good. Okay, Kent.
The other thing, Mayor, would we have somebody from the HRA on that?
Well,
and I was wondering somebody from the chamber.
Well, there are counter, sort of subcommittees in the HRA now that are dealing with some development matters.
Okay.
And Councilor Droffs is the liaison to the HRA. So,
yep.
And I'm sure there would be nothing to prevent this subcommittee meeting with either the HRA as a whole or, with proper notice, or the chamber for that matter, or otherwise. I guess, isn't that in the purview of a committee to kind of decide how it can best go about serving the council? Yeah. Nothing prevents us as a council too, considering things. And so I've suggested the formation of a business development committee consisting of Councilor Joffs, Councilor Honkala, the city administrator, and myself, right?
I do have one question for the city attorney. Mike, do you know that this would cause an issue having a quorum on a committee because the committee would then be able to take city action? My understanding is that the HRA wanted this to be kind of a joint thing to then go back to each of the two boards.
Well, you would hope that they wouldn't be taking action. They would constitute a quorum. They could take action without the other ones being present. You will certainly hope that that wouldn't happen. I see what you're saying, though, potential conflict. I'm not saying they would, but they could take action without the other councilors there because they do have a quorum.
Well, I'm perfectly willing to withdraw from the committee if that would make things easier. I have tried to keep informed of the HRA's activities, and obviously we as councilors in certain circumstances communicate also. So if it would avoid some problems and still enable the committee to be as effective as possible, why don't Councilors Honkala and Joffs work with the city administrator as the business development committee, and if we find that isn't working and fully fulfilling, we can always bring it back for reconsideration.
Okay.
That's fair. Thank you, Doug.
Well, I'm not sitting idle as mayor. So committees. I'm certainly learning by experience. There are a lot of things to occupy time and talent. Okay, so now we have the revised motion or suggestion for a business development committee in that form. And I would make the motion. Is there support for it?
I'll support.
All right, moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, City Administrator, could you read the roll call?
Warshak,
Aye.
Jofs,
Aye.
Ankala,
Yes.
Loxo,
Aye.
Gregor.
Aye, yes. Motion carries. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, 17.3, the early disbursement of 2020 taxes. The City Administrator, do you want to explain or embellish upon what was in our packet? I'm anxious to see if there's some reason why we wouldn't want to get tax receipts sooner. Yes.
So the city has actually never requested early disbursements of taxes before. We usually do wait until July to get those taxes in from the county. However, I thought that perhaps the council, with the current state of affairs in the world, would be interested in requesting that early disbursements. The disbursement is 70% of taxes received by May would then be dispersed to the city, or we would wait till July 5th. That's when the remainder of it or the entire thing would be dispersed. So.
Would it cause any administrative, accounting, or other problems if we did get it in early?
We would then be running in the black. No. Yeah, it's wouldn't cause an issue because we receipt it regardless.
And I take it that we probably would not need the proceeds early in order to remain solvent and pay our bills?
That would be correct. It would ease, we are bearing additional costs due to the COVID pandemic, but it would ease that burden on the city.
Okay. Well, is there a motion to make a request for early disbursement?
So moved.
Moved.
I'll second. I'll support.
Supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, City Administrator, roll call vote.
Warshak,
Aye.
Jofs,
Aye.
Ankala,
Yes.
Loxo,
Aye.
Gregor.
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 17.4, the spring cleanup. Don't remember that there's anything in our packet, right? City Administrator, just want to explain the item on the agenda?
Yes, typically the city does a spring cleanup where citizens can put yard items out on their curb and Public Works picks it up for them. We are requesting, the Public Works Department and myself are requesting that we delay that pickup until the fall.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Reasonable.
Yeah, due to the emergency and the pandemic, right? So is there a motion to approve delaying the cleanup until the fall?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, it's been moved.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say, oh no, I'm sorry. We go to a roll call vote. City Administrator?
Warshak,
Aye.
Jofs,
Aye.
Ankala,
Yes.
Loxo,
Aye.
Gregor.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving to item 17.5, the Costing Group proposal for services. Let's see. I know some of the background of this. City Administrator, do you want to provide us with background?
This proposal was actually just sent to me. I didn't receive any background with it.
All right. Well, I was explaining earlier in a meeting with Councilor Joffs, kind of background history on this, it's a proposal to provide essentially lobbying services to try to obtain funds from the Legislative Commission on Mineral Resources, which is a separate funded authority of the state that does have apparently monies available to make grants to communities for projects like they're proposing to provide services on in the letter that's in our packet. As I understand it, and as I think their proposal lays out, they are looking to essentially again be a lobbyist for the city in advocating for funds to perform hydrological and technical services and research. And I think in the amount of about $500,000 or $600,000, I defer to whatever's in the letter. And the grant cycle of the Legislative Commission on Mineral Resources isn't laid out as I see it in the materials that we've gotten, but it will continue to meet and receive applications beyond the end of the legislative session. So with their, and the problem that's obviously meant to be addressed is the rising water level within the St. James pit that serves as the water source currently and for the foreseeable future for the city of Aurora. And there's an analogy to this whole situation at the Canastillo pit on the west end of the range. The Hill Annex pit has a similar rising water level problem. There was legislation in the last session, the previous year legislative session, to provide $6.5 million to the Department of Natural Resources to do this work. That legislation did not pass. I think that I have not heard anything from our representative or from members of this Costin group that would indicate in any way that there's any legislation this year that would provide funds to explore the hydrological and other technical aspects of the rising water level in the St. James pit. So they're again proposing services at the rate of $1,250 a month. Their draft contract proposes that they would provide these services for a total of 18 months.
It reads 15 in the paperwork that I received.
Yeah, 15 is what I saw.
Oh, is it 15? Oh, that's a little better. Okay, 15 months. And it's an area of activity that certainly during my tenure, I am not aware of the city directly employing lobbyists. I suppose the closest would be the lobbyist with the SEH firm that are working on the joint water project, which is funded from other sources. So it's Councilor Warshak, you've been on the council again longer than the rest of us. Are there precedents where the city has employed the services of the lobbyist?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Well, that speaks for a lot. City attorney, is there anything in your experience that either the city has done it or any of the surrounding cities have employed lobbyists?
To my knowledge, Aurora hasn't done it, specifically their own lobbyists. Other communities have done it, and if anybody can find money, it's Gary Cervenic.
Yeah, I didn't know how far to go, but I can state from discussions with some of our elected officials and from seeing him in action in the legislature and the reaction of some of the committees when I was testifying last year, I would say he's either the most or one of the most effective legislators currently active down in the legislature. And I realize that contracts are meant to be kind of the letter of the contract, but the fact of the matter would be, I assume if we were to contract with his firm for lobbying services on this particular legislative commission on mineral resources funding issue, that there'd be some reasonable collateral benefits that that firm would essentially be identified as a lobbying for us. But that's nothing they're representing to provide. So it's a whole new area to look into. The costs, I assume, City Administrator, we don't have any identified funding source for something like this, right?
Correct. You did not budget for this line item.
Right. I guess my personal preference at the moment was to like lay this issue in the proposal, and maybe we could take some time to consider it, and also maybe get either personal input from one of the principals in this firm, kind of educate us a little more on what they could do, and present that at a subsequent council meeting for consideration, because again, the Legislative Commission on Mineral Resources, I believe, has a funding, grant funding cycle that is independent of the legislature. And it would be nice to know when they think they would need to provide the most effective services, and give us some more explanation. With this new technology we have, it would seem to be relatively easy to have them make an appearance in front of us.
That would be my thought, Mayor, is it's not budgeted. I do think it's a great idea, but I would be looking more towards 21 and see if we can budget it. And the other, I mean, I still have questions on, and Gary could answer them, is I thought at one time we were talking, this was a DNR issue, and even though it's ours, but I really thought DNR handled water, so I can't remember where that got left off. Then the other thing is, Gary, they also work for Rams, and could we, through Rams, have Gary go down and work this issue for us?
Yeah.
So I'd have questions for Gary anyway. I think Gary would do an excellent job, but.
We have a motion then to table it with a request to the principals, either Gary or Jeff, to participate in a subsequent meeting to give us some more background on the proposal for services. Would you be willing to make that motion, Dave?
Yes. Yep. There again, I'd be leaning towards 21, but yeah. So if we could get Gary in sometime and now, and then we could talk about budgeting it for 21. But yes, that'd be my motion.
Support for the motion?
Support.
Okay. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, City Administrator, could you do a roll call vote?
Borshak?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye, on the notion that this is just getting information.
Yep.
Right.
Pankala?
Oh, you're on mute, Alicia. Mute.
Yes.
Blackshall?
Aye.
Gregor?
Yes. Okay, a motion carries. Okay, moving on to the Celebrate Aurora requests. Items 17.6 in general and 17.6.1 through 17.6.11. City Administrator, do you have any suggestions on, particularly given the roll call votes, how we could sort of lump these together to go forward?
Yep, you could, there's a couple different ways we could do this. Celebrate Aurora has not made a determination as to if they will be going forward with their event or not. I know that quite a few committees in the area also have those similar concerns. You could table them all pending a decision from Celebrate Aurora as to if they're going forward or not. They are meeting in May, so that they will determine at their May meeting if they are going to go forward with 4th of July, and 4th of July being the parade, the downtown business, street vendor type thing. They may do events that look a little different than that regardless, but you may want to table it as a whole to deter until Celebrate Aurora determines, or you could make a motion to approve these individually or altogether as pending or with the understanding that the event would go on.
Becky, could you tell us the amount in the gambling line right now?
Yes, the gambling fund has $3,647.15 in it currently.
And they're not collecting or offering pool tabs or gambling in our city right now, correct?
That would be correct because the restaurants are closed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's again a situation, the bars may be reopened by the time that May meeting takes place, and a period of time when some gambling revenues possibly could come in, but they're asking for 5,000 and what we have 3650 basically available, right?
Correct.
Right. So. Other comments on the listed items there? Councillor Jokes, I know you had some concerns about the route.
Yeah, well, and I've been talking to some people. I'm checking into some things, but like Becky said, we don't know what's happening. I personally think that we should table this until Celebrate Aurora decides what's happening with our 4th of July celebration this year.
I'll take that as a motion. Is there support?
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported to table these pending further guidance from the Celebrate Aurora Committee. Any more discussion on the matter? If not, City Administrator, could you take a roll call vote on that tabling motion?
Warshik?
Aye.
Jofs?
Aye.
Konkala?
Yes.
Loxo?
Aye.
Gregor?
Yes. Okay, so that motion passes. Moving on to item 17.7, the utility policy. City Administrator, could you give us some background on that, the development of that policy, or is someone from the committee?
Yes. So that policy was developed by the utility committee that consists of myself, Councillor Joseph, Thuringer. To our surprise, these policies have never been in place before in the city of Aurora. And so in front of you, it's just a official policy for how we handle utility bills in the city. It goes through specifically what items get turned off when you request your water turned off as far as the bill goes. It indicates that there's no forgiveness of that bill as long as the property exists and there's water connection to that property. The bill I know
would it be fair to say that it's an expression basically of how matters have been handled in the absence of a policy?
No. There's been back and forth. Sometimes it's done one way, sometimes it's done another. It's very inconsistent as to how it's currently being handled.
Well, I guess my first reaction was to it. It's the product of one of our committees. The committee's given some consideration to it in the absence of a policy that already exists, unless there's something particularly bad about any of the elements of it. It's like all policies, we can implement it and see how well it works or whether it needs to be modified or supplemented. I think it's another element in what the city administrator has been trying to work on is to have more actual expressions and written policies pertaining to the core businesses or core activities of the city. So if anybody have any Any other thoughts from councilors or a motion to approve the proposed policies?
I'll make a motion
I
to
make a
approve as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Councilor Warshak, seconded by Councilor Joffs. Any further discussion? Councilor Laxo? Concerns? No, I don't see any there. Did you have a concern, Councilor?
No, that will stick with the present policy here.
Yep. Okay, Councilor Honkala, any
No.
comments?
No comments.
Seeing no further comments on it, City Administrator, could you call a roll on the motion on the table?
Warshak,
Aye.
Jofs,
Aye.
Ankala,
Yep, yes.
Laxo,
Yep.
Aye.
Gregor.
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to item 17.8, the revocation of a license from 1930 to the Keaton Iron Company and St. James Mining Company. I asked the city administrator to confirm, and in fact, someone's trying to clear up the title to some property, and this old mining license apparently was of record. Is that correct, city administrator?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, so I'd certainly move that we approve the revocation of the license. Is there support?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion?
I'm just glad you didn't ask me if I was around back when this happened.
You have some
I have a comment, but I'm gonna bite my lip on this one.
City attorney, since that's essentially a legal matter, does that seem an appropriate action of the council to just go along with the request for revocation?
That's correct, to clear up the title and remove that from the chain and the title certificate. Yes, sure, Mayor.
City administrator, I think there's a motion to approve the revocation. Do you want to do a roll call?
Warshak,
Aye.
Jofs,
Yes.
Ankala,
Yes.
Laxo,
Aye.
Gregor.
Yes. Motion carries. And I think, let's see, that would take us back to, I don't see any other new business, so we'd go back to item 16.2, the agenda format information. City Administrator, do you want to, we've seen this actually before, right?
That is correct. You have seen it before. In my quest to figure out what information the council wants to make decisions, these are some examples of draft information that I put together. The first one is an example agenda. Currently on the agenda, the information you get is only the gross payroll paid to employees. It does not indicate any benefits that we also pay out. So the new agenda would indicate both the pay the employees actually receive along with their benefits and a total for that amount. The construction project outline is, again, just a draft. It's how I personally keep track of all of our construction. It indicates the project, the engineer, the cost, both the estimated and the awarded bid cost, as well as the funding for that project. Quarterly financial statements, there's a lot in that particular packet, but it's both numbers and graphs showing where we're at in revenues and expenditures for departments. Point 4 is supplemental information, and again, that's just an example. I know that some counselors like to sit down with me and we go through the agenda and I provide all that information to them, but for every agenda item I have everything I think is going to be asked, I have answers to that on my agenda. So the supplemental information would be just that providing that information to council, particularly regarding costs, those types of things. Emergency savings, again, example numbers, but what we have currently in emergency reserves for general and then the enterprise funds. And then the last report, 0.6, is the cash allocation report. The front page of that is current cash accounts, which doesn't give a great picture of the current state of the city because accounts are continuously fluctuating with payroll and utility billings. The second page outlines the assigned funds, the restricted funds, and any other information or funding that the council has, for lack of a better term, earmarked for a particular project or activity.
Well, my personal impression was I always favor when I can see something graphically that has to do with financial data. Not that I couldn't wade through things, but as long as we've got the tools under our new system to be able to do some graphic representations, it seems to me like I certainly appreciate that supplemental information. Obviously, I assume each time we got presented with one of these, there'd be some kind of a heading that would say, like, the first quarter of fiscal year 20 or the first half of, or second quarter of, something to put it in context relative to the fiscal year, right?
Yes.
Right. So should we?
I like what you're doing there, Becky, and I've always been, the more information, the better. The only thing can we add, and because I always ask this, is when we have a project come up, and I don't know, maybe under your construction project outline, would just be a little change as to when the project comes up for that we want to vote on to do is, can you put that in there and with possible funding sources and knowing that might change, but at least we kind of know where money might be coming from.
Yep, and so that would actually be provided under supplemental information. It would say what line item's been budgeted for it. If we would apply for this grant for that amount.
Perfect. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And so that wouldn't be like quarterly. That would be as part of our regular agenda process. That when we have an item presented that involves an expenditure, that we'd be getting some information on the either identified or potential funding sources at the time that we're on the agenda item.
Yes. So, for example, tonight, if you were to get that for tonight's packet, the Celebrate Aurora on the amount $5,000 request they have, I would indicate, under supplemental information in your packet that there is not $5,000 in that account, that there's the $3,600 in there, the exact amount that was in that account.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think that would help us kind of move along. I mean, obviously, part of every item we consider on the agenda, to the extent it has cost implications, we're trying to be good stewards of the money, right? And trying to be aware whether we anticipated in the budget, or if we didn't, what sort of discretionary alternative source or our reserves, right? A lot of times we turn back to unanticipated expenditures for the reserve, right? So. Yeah, that would seem to me to be very helpful. I guess even though some of these things, graphically show where we are relative to the fiscal year budget, sometimes that just provokes a question too, like why is one department's expenditures to date, why are they out of line, let's put it, with what one might expect on a calendar progression? So, if we know that Public Works is expended in September of a fiscal year, 90% of its money, it'd be nice to know that, first of all. I think that's what we have the opportunity to get, but also then maybe some kind of leading to some kind of explanation of why should we be alarmed, or is that just the way things evolved over the years?
And you can see in the example information provided to you, under the cemetery, they expended quite a bit more than their budget item. That because they bought a columbarium, you know, so those types of things can be explained in that way.
So we could have like footnotes or something for something that seems way out of line with the point we are in the fiscal year.
Yes.
That'd be good. Other general comments? I mean, I agree with the.
I personally enjoy all the visuals. It helps you wrap your head around what's going on, that there's currently 60% of the budget is gone. This helps me understand the decisions that are.
I agree with Talisha.
And it's colored. Who doesn't like color?
The wonders of the era in which we live. Yeah, it seems like maybe we could proceed cautiously to start implementing a few of these additional informational sources and kind of wait to see whether we start screaming we're getting too much information, or I don't know.
I think the information right here is great with all the graphs. Would you just start with this, or would you simplify it?
That's what I would say. Let's start with what Becky's shown us, and as long as it's, you know, good for Becky, why not start with it and go from there?
Exactly. I'm in agreement.
Becky, would that cause a great deal of additional accounting work, or is it a natural byproduct or printout of the accounting systems that we've got in place?
For the most part, most of the items on here are things I already do. However, the quarterly financial statements are something that would take a little bit more finesse, but since they are quarterly, it wouldn't be too much of a problem. I will forewarn you that, so the first quarter would be January, February, March. You would not get the quarterly report until March is closed. And so that may be May or June.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And if you need help, I'd come in and help you, Becky.
Bring your calculator, Dave.
Yeah. Calculator, piece of paper, and a pencil.
And your fingers.
Just in terms of staffing, Kimberly as the accounting clerk, she realizing she's still kind of newer to her job and learning a lot of things, is that ultimately something that she could work with you on to relieve some, I mean, I never feel you have an idle moment anywhere to expand upon. I'm just wondering, is that something in terms of like our personnel committee or otherwise we could look to enhancing the accounting clerk's position, or?
It would kind of depend. We'll have to see where everything lands after the emergency situation ends and she feels more comfortable.
Right. Well, I think that all this data is such an amazing reward for the pain and expense that the city went through to update its accounting systems and its computer systems, and creating these opportunities for such vividly colored graphic things. So yeah, I think it's a nice thing to know that the city has progressed to this point where we can actually generate data like that in the forms that you're proposing. It's just great. 21st century, here we are.
Do we need a motion to that effect then, or is that just something we implement?
Do a blanket motion.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Warshak to start with at least a trial quarterly update, right? With the reports that the city administrators laid out. Is there support?
I'll support.
All right, so we have two supports. Councilor Laxo, any reflections on these reports, or?
No, Becky did an excellent job putting this together. It answers a lot of questions that won't have to be asked at the meetings, and I like it.
Yep. Well, I echo Councilor Laxo's comments, and are there any other comments that on the motion? If not, City Administrator, could you call a roll call vote?
Warshak,
Aye.
Jofs,
Aye.
Konkala,
Yes.
Loxo,
Aye.
Gregor.
Yes. So the motion carries, and I believe that concludes our agenda. Is anyone aware of anything that we've left? And I think we have our next meeting scheduled for Tuesday, April 21st. Once again, it'll be video conferencing unless some miracle cure comes up for the COVID conditions. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Moved. Support?
I'll support.
Support. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. City Administrator?
Warshak, Dave Warshak,
Dave, you there?
Dave? He's kind of frozen.
He's frozen, yeah.
okay. Jofs,
Yes.
Konkala,
Yes.
Loxo,
Aye.
Gregor.
Yes. Motion carries. And with that, our meeting's adjourned. And I thought it was a very successful Zoom session.
It's getting a little easier every time.